Hey friends, Billy here with another just real quick video on an arcane build I've been playing in Mythic Plus this week. Let's get started. Now I'm going to include some highlights at the end of my video that will show my damage, but to start off, these are my talents. Amplification, Shimmer, Rune of Power, Resonance. This is important for the Arcane Barrage damage. We're going to be using the Arcane Barrage Legendary, so this is good synergy with it. Arcane Orb also has good synergy because when you Arcane Orb in AoE, you get full stacks of Arcane charges, which lets you do a full barrage. And Enlightened because it gives you sustained damage. Now in terms of Covenants, we're going to be using Night Fae, getting the sweet juicy CDR and all of your abilities. Now when it comes to your Soulbinds and your Conduits, I believe there are two ways you can go about it. Now the first of the two Soulbinds is Naya. What Naya does is she gives you Grove Invigoration, which is a mastery buff. Mastery is one of Arcane's best stats. And then her other ability is Naya's Tools Poison. Whenever you land a counterspell, you get damage on the target. This can do a lot of, I've had this do up to 3% of my overall damage in a key. If you land your kicks with this trait on, it's actually great value, especially on single target in dungeons. Now with this pathway we have access to two potency conduits. The first of which is Artifice of the Archmage. This one offers little value, but it's some AoE value, and that's what we want in Mythic Plus. So if you want a second potency conduit from Mythic Plus, I take this one. And the one potency conduit that you'll always take is Magi's Brand, which makes your Touch of the Magi do more damage on single target and when it explodes AoE. Now the second of the two Soulbinds is Korayn, and this is the one that I personally prefer, and I'll tell you why. He has two traits that are very good here. Wild Hunt Tactics, which is 10% increased damage above 75% HP. This pretty much means 10% increased damage in your burst window, assuming you're bursting on pull. This is good. And then First Strike, which is at the start of pulls, you get 25% crit. So pretty much when you first tag a mob in Mythic Plus, you're doing 10% more damage and you gain 25% more crit. So think about that. When you do your opener, it's going to be a strong opener. These are the conduits that I prefer. It's using one potency conduit because First Strike does not have a potency conduit with it. Potency conduit is supposed to be right here. I'm opting into one potency conduit, which is this one, and I'm using Wild Hunt Tactics, First Strike. This is the Soulbind that I prefer for Arcane. So for Mythic Plus, we're going for an Arcane Barrage build. We're going to be using Arcane Bombardment, which is this legendary right here. It is the Shadowlands version of the BFA Azerite trait Arcane Pressure, giving increased damage on Arcane Barrage on mobs below 35% HP. It gives Arcane an AoE execute, helps Arcane excel in AoE packs, even outside of CDs and even when mobs are moving. When you're using this as legendary, you want to make sure you're always looking to snipe mobs that are below 35% HP. I made a weak aura right here that when I'm targeting a mob below 35% HP, the Arcane Barrage logo will glow. I will leave a paste spin to this weak aura down below in the description. It's a very simple weak aura though. So I always start this section by letting everyone know that your stat weights will change a lot depending on your race, your current gear, and the type of pull that you're simming for. Keep that in mind. What I'm giving you right here is a general stat weight. And what that looks like is Mastery is looking to be our best stat with crit greater than or equal to Burst, which is greater than Haste. Haste is a pretty low stat Arcane. So for trinkets, they're going to be using the PvP badge because right now is currently the best on use trinket and it lasts 15 seconds just like AP. The second trinket we'll be using is Kabbalist Hymnal, which is a stat stick which essentially just gives you a shit ton of crit. And crit is one of Arcane's best stats, so it's not a bad trinket. This right here would be our single target boss opener, which you pre-cast touch, you pop your badge Arcane Power macro, pop palm, and Arcane Blast 3 times to get rid of the palm. If you get a missiles, you use missiles. But other than that, you just spam Arcane Blast forever. And if you get a missiles, just make sure to use it, even during Arcane Power. So, no cooldown single target. These are scenarios where you want to dump all of your mana, and then you also want to find Evocate and Palm to use. Because Evocate and Palm, Presence of Mind, you do not use these abilities on AoE pretty much ever. So, Prideful is the perfect time to use it. Prideful also gives you mana back. So dumping all of your mana is the most value you can get out of your resource, because you're going to get it all back, right? The best way that a group can pull around an Arcane Mage is to plan out Prideful's 4 bosses. In this pull, I do not have Arcane Power on pull, but I'm able to just pump out and blast Arcane Blast because of the mana regen on Prideful. So having Prideful for single target is really strong for Arcane. So the AoE opener goes as follows. Precast Touch of the Magi, going to give you those 4 stacks of Arcane charges. You're going to pop your cooldowns. You're going to throw an Arcane Barrage. You're going to Arcane Orb to get all of your charges back, and you're going to Barrage again. At that point, you're Arcane Explosioning until 4 stacks of Arcane charges, and then you're Barraging. The entire time, you are looking for mobs below 35% HP to Arcane Barrage. Always target a mob below 35% HP and barrage it in an AoE pack. It is okay to Arcane Explosion at max charges if it lets you hold an Arcane Barrage a couple globals to get it below 35% HP target. Outside of cooldowns, do the same thing in Arcane Explosion till 4 stacks and Barrage. You want to try to find a time in between your Arcane Power to use 1 Touch of the Magi. This pull is my pull where I use Touch of the Magi. I'm also holding my Arcane Barrage until this 35% mob right here. Get the big crit. So to wrap this video up, the biggest tips I can give to Arcane Mage is to use Arcane Orb on CD. The best and quickest way to get out Arcane Barrages. Dump all mana before Prideful. Sneak in some water drinks. Do not forget to use Mana Gem, primarily on single target. Try to get efficient uses of Presence of Mind, Rune of Power, and Touch of the Mage in between your Arcane Power. Do not be afraid to Rune of Power. And remember that you are a melee spec when you AoE, so you get extra threat from being in melee. You have to be a lot more aware of this as an Arcane Mage than the other 2 specs. You have 2 abilities that can counter this kind of hard. First one is Mirror's Image, which will redirect your threat to your images until they are meleeed. This buys the tank time to get aggro back. And Greater Invis, which is pretty much a vanish. Instantly drops aggro. This right here is a pull where I had no cooldowns, but I did have Touch and Rune. As you can see, when the mobs hit below 35%, my damage starts to skyrocket a bit. This is no cooldown damage, so remember that. And this right here is a pretty big pull where I pretty much had everything up, and I was able to do a lot of damage. As you can see, no matter the positioning of the mobs and where they're being kited, it's very easy to get my damage out. As you can see, I have full mobility while casting Arcane Explosion. And this pull right here is an example of Prideful and single target. I started this boss with a Prideful buff, and I have not gotten close to running out of mana, and I've been spamming Arcane Blast the whole time. So if you have Prideful for single target, it's really strong. In conclusion, I believe Arcane is actually one of the better specs when you look at every spec in the game. It is definitely above average compared to most. One thing I noticed though is that to me, Arcane kind of just feels like a worse Fire Mage. Their damage profile is actually incredibly similar. It's just Arcane Power is just a way longer CD, and forcing Combust to 1 minute is very easy. So, thank you guys for watching, and I believe I'll make a Frost one soon, so look forward to that.